Hi Simon, welcome along today to our Thought Leader Resource Revolution series, and we're here today really to discuss the role that small and medium-sized enterprises can play in working towards a circular economy. And it's interesting looking at your company's own top 10 sustainability commitments. One of them is to influence the bigger picture. You obviously feel quite strongly, don't you, that SMEs can play a good role, a valuable role in working towards, say, zero waste or closing the loop.
My own view is that all companies have an opportunity to embrace all the innovation which sustainability brings, whether that's through their attitude towards their waste streams themselves or the products they produce from their waste, or whether it's the way they deal with their customers and their suppliers to try and change those ways they work. But the key driver for me isn't so much whether a company is large or small, but whether the mindset that company has allows them to look at those innovations and whether it gives them the opportunity to take themselves out of their normal way of working, to look at these new ways of doing things. Because for me, that's the big challenge we've got to address right now. Not is it possible to do things in the way we have been doing in the past, but how do we make those changes to make it possible for companies to continue to thrive into the future?
And can you give me an example where a commercial group has, perhaps for its own in-house philosophies, actually influenced a bigger company in terms of working towards better resource management?
Commercial is very fortunate because the products and services that we provide are ubiquitous throughout most companies. Most companies will have an office where they have furniture, where they use stationery, where they have IT equipment, where they have all the kind of print and promotional items that sit around with the brand on. And so it's eminently possible for the services that commercial provides to change the way that business works without it necessary for the company to look at itself and say, we need to make a conscious decision to do something different. So we work a lot with the procurement staff, with the facility staff, to set what the boundaries will be on what is good practice and what is bad practice, and then try to influence the buying practices of the whole organisation to match those sustainability objectives which the company might set.
If, say, the circular economy is our end point, our end destination, what role can the SME bring to the mix in terms of accelerating that journey forward?
One of the main drivers for all of this has to be innovation. It has to be the new ideas. It has to be the new way of thinking. In my experience, a lot of that new way of thinking comes through the entrepreneurial ideas, which traditionally have come through from smaller enterprises, those companies which are more dynamic and more able to move. Now, obviously, there are still some very, very strong entrepreneurs in larger organisations, and there's ways of doing things in larger organisations which you can try things out, which maybe in a smaller organisation they wouldn't be so easy to try. But if, as let's say, you are rolling out a system like a change management system which will influence a small group of people, and you have a small group of people to work with, then you can make a bigger impact in a percentage term. Let's say you only have 200, 300 employees. If you can influence those 200, 300 employees, then you can make a culture change within the whole organisation. While if you've got 50,000 employees, just changing 200, 300 won't make that big difference.
Interestingly, our own research suggests that while SMEs really do embrace the idea of a circular economy, they lack the investment, I guess, to make that change. And how can these sort of funding issues be addressed within an SME? Often, they are sort of struggling to keep their kind of head above water.
If you're an organisation which wants to make change, you need to see what that end goal is, and then it's best to work from that position to work out how you're going to get there, rather than thinking there's a big thing to achieve and it's so huge and how are we going to manage it because we can't start. What I've experienced with people who have tried to find investment for a big goal, it's actually very, very difficult. What's more sensible is to say, how are we going to meet that step by step by step by step? And investing at the very, very core of what you want to achieve at that first step then yields the value, which then can allow you to persuade the board to give you the money for the second step.
Is it a case of you invest small first and it's like a step change, like a step-by-step process?
The simple analogy is, if you are trying to jump over a wall, it is very, very hard. But if you can create a ladder or a set of steps which get you to that top of that wall by bit, then suddenly the wall isn't as tall anymore. And in my experience, those people who say, I cannot invest in the money, it's because they perceive a big quantity of money which is beyond their comprehension, rather than seeing the journey to that end goal. I would say that actually, once you start on that journey, often they become self-funding. The money comes back to you, the ideas come back to you, everything works positively, and those positive feedback loops make each step easier, one after another.
I mean, it's quite ironic considering our research revealed that nearly half of smaller businesses view their waste streams as a profit opportunity, or potentially a profit opportunity. Often it's a case of securing that investment up front. Do you think, you've kind of touched on it, but do you think to begin with they do need to present a strong business case?
I think actually for many organisations it is an information gap, it's a knowledge gap. A lot of people don't know, they have a concept of how much value their waste is a terrible word, the resources they're throwing away, they have a concept of that value, but actually making that something concrete is very, very difficult. I think there's a big challenge for a number of people who say, I can do this, and they want to do it, but getting that information and that understanding of how to get there is often harder. And I think if you're in a single organisation sitting on your own and there's only a small number of you considering those options, it's often harder. I think for me, the solution to that is collaboration. It's talking to each other, it's opening doors to each other, it's listening and getting that understanding together, and that enables you to grow.
And would that knowledge sharing be between, say, SMEs, or would it be with perhaps the waste management industry who could have a role here, arguably, to play in terms of perhaps offering more consultancy?
I think it has to be a conversation between lots of different people. It has to be a conversation between the waste industry, between SMEs, between corporates, between local authorities, and talking not just within those silos, but talking across the whole industry.
Right.
Because we each have our own experiences, we've each got our own learning, we've each got our own problems, but actually a lot of those experiences are very similar, a lot of that learning is very similar.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what would you advise an SME who perhaps is looking to collaborate in this way but doesn't know the first thing about how to kind of reach out, I guess?
Time is the big limiting factor, and efficiently using time to find out information is really important. There are lots of events which one can go to. I would say that in my experience the most successful events are those where you can meet people from outside the sector, and you have the opportunity to meet up with individuals who are different stages in their journey which you're on.
And there's been a lot of talk really, particularly within the waste industry, how it needs to kind of reach out more to SMEs in terms of offering more affordable recycling services, for instance. Do you feel that SMEs still get a raw deal from the waste industry compared perhaps to bigger companies who are in a better negotiating position because of the tonnages of waste material that they generate?
I think there's a huge opportunity for organisations to collaborate on those kind of matters as well. And we've seen some success with organisations working together to understand the value of waste streams. It is for me one of the exciting things that happens with a circular economy, that no longer is it waste you have to dispose of, but it's resources you're starting to reuse. And the opportunity for different organisations which have different resource use requirements to talk to each other and share is for me really powerful. And it may be possible for an organisation which is slightly more innovative, which can think slightly more laterally, to utilise those waste streams from another organisation just down the road they don't even know has them, just by having a conversation. And it could be a waste company which links them together, it could be just a conversation between two managing directors, it could be a conversation between two receptionists in front of a school gate. And
as the circular economy does start gaining momentum, how do you see this impacting really on SMEs?
I can really see a growth in companies that can embrace these changes. And those companies, for me, which have a huge advantage when looking at things like the circular economy, are those that have a long-term view. Those which are not necessarily simply thinking about what are we going to do this year, what are we going to do next year, but have an understanding that their business will continue operating 20, 30, 40 years hence. And family businesses have a massive advantage because they have that generation after generation in running and understanding how the business works. And I think there will be a huge opportunity for family businesses to take leadership with the new kind of way of working that business will be doing in the future.
Well, thanks, Simon. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Thank you.